Hi there, Kendra Tolbert here. I'm a registered dietitian and yoga teacher, and I specialize in PCOS, women's health, and fertility. And today I have a video all about my journey through menstrual cycle charting and everything that I've learned in the last 5.5 years. So hopefully the information that I share will help you if you are new to cycle tracking, or if you've already been doing it, or if you're like, what is she even talking about? So that you can begin to explore it and maybe get some new insight if you're someone who's quite familiar with this method already. I also have a giveaway for you from the lovely company Proov. So if you are interested in that giveaway, make sure to stick around to the end where I tell you more about how to enter. Okay, let's get right into cycle charting. So most of what I have learned about how to track my cycle has come from 3 resources. And so I want to share with you those 3 resources. The first one is this book by Lisa Hendrickson Jack, The Fifth Vital Sign. It's such a good book. She also has a podcast called Fertility Fridays. It's really, really good. So if you want to learn more about everything really that you can learn from your menstrual cycle and charting it, definitely check out this book and her podcast, which I'll link to for both below. And the other one, which was the first book I ever read on the fertility awareness method, cycle charting, cycle tracking, and all that, was Taking Charge of Your Fertility. Really good book. I feel like this is the one that started it all for many people. So I'm a huge fan of both of these books and highly recommend them. The third place would be Clara Bailey. I guess she's not a place, she's a person. And she is a naturopath, an herbalist, and a fertility awareness educator. And she has some actually really amazing free resources on her website. So I will link to those as well. All of those are definitely going to give you far more information than I can ever pack into a video. And I think that can often be a better way to go, is to really take a deep dive into the information, get, immersed in it, marinate in it, and really get to know it, get some understanding about it. And I think you'll enjoy all 3 of those resources. Okay, so now a little bit more about my journey with cycle tracking, how I do it, what I use, and what I've learned in the last 5.5 years. Also, 75 plus cycles that I've been charting. Yeah, it's quite a bit. Okay. So I started, as I said, about 5.5 years ago, strictly out of curiosity. I like to learn a lot about bodies, especially my own. And in doing so, I've learned a lot about how amazing and wise my body really is, and how it's constantly giving us signals. It's constantly giving us information if we only learn the language and learn how to interpret what it's saying to us in its own unique way. So I use toilet paper, I use a basal body thermometer, and sometimes I use OPKs, ovulation predictor kits, and sometimes I also use Proov's progesterone kit. So those are the things that I use sometimes, and the things that I use most of the time. Toilet paper, we'll talk about why I use toilet paper, and the basal body thermometer. Those are the 2 that I use most consistently. And the basal body thermometer I don't use quite as consistently as I use toilet paper. So I track my cycles both in my bullet journal and in Kendra. It kind of depends on what I'm feeling in any given month. So when I'm feeling a little more artsy and I want to be more hands-on, I guess, I will actually create a chart in my bullet journal and track everything in there. Other times, and most often, I use Kendra, which is the app that I've been using since I started. I've tried a lot of other apps, but it's my favorite. It's just like a really clean interface. It's simple, it's convenient, and it actually has a feature that allows people to share their charts, both within their community, but also share their charts with a provider if that provider has a provider account with Kendra. So some of my clients will actually share their charts with me, and I'm able to take a look and give them some insight and give them, just like a second opinion on what they're seeing within their charts. So I think that's a lovely feature and one of the many reasons that I like it. So definitely check them out if you are looking for an app to use. So what I do is on the first day of my period, I mark that down. whether that is in my bullet journal or whether that's in the app, and I mark down how heavy my flow is. And I continue to do that until the last day of my period. And then from there, I will start to pay attention to vaginal sensation and cervical mucus. The cervical mucus, I'm mostly looking for after I wipe. When I use the restroom, Caitlin Johnson, who did a video, I'll link to that one below as well, gave me a really good tip, and she shares this amazing tip, which is to check your cervical mucus after you have a bowel movement, because the pushing down that you do when you have a bowel movement actually helps the cervical mucus to come to the entrance of your vaginal canal, so that you're actually able to pick up more of it on your toilet paper and get an idea of what the texture and consistency is like. So I think that's a genius tip. Caitlin is a genius, so that makes perfect sense that she would give such a good tip. So that's mostly what I'm looking for, right? Like, am I feeling wetness? Am I noticing some slipperiness on the cervical mucus side? How much am I noticing? And that lets me know, once I start to have that wet sensation, once I start to have that cervical mucus on my toilet paper, that, hey, I'm in my fertile window. If we're gonna say someone else, if someone else noticed that and they were trying to conceive, then that's when they would want to have sex, when they're noticing those fertile signs. If someone is avoiding getting pregnant, then that's when they would avoid sex. They would abstain, or they would use a birth control method of some sort, usually a barrier method or maybe spermicide or something like that. So yeah, that's what they would then do, depending on which group they fall under. And then after that, I will then look for, you know, a change, a shift in my cervical mucus. If it dries up, then I can assume that ovulation occurred, especially if it dries up and it stays dry until my next period, then I can assume that ovulation did occur within that cycle. The other thing that I am often doing, sometimes doing, not always doing, is checking my basal body temperature. So on a cycle where I have decided that I'm going to check my basal body temperature, then I try to do it until, I'll tell you when in just a moment. But what I'll do then is take my basal body temperature every day during my cycle, and then at ovulation, what'll happen is that there'll be a slight dip and then it'll spike up. That temperature shift lets me know that ovulation has occurred. And then if it stays up for 1, 2, 3 days, then I know that ovulation has occurred. That's how I confirm ovulation. And then I'll usually stop taking my temperature because ovulation has already occurred and it's already confirmed. I'm really not getting much information for me about the rest of my cycle at that point from taking my basal body temperature. So I hope that gives you some insight into how it works, at least how I do it. Some people also check their cervical position, and so that'll also give them some insight into where they are in their cycle, because our cervix actually changes in both how it feels and its actual positioning throughout our cycle. Again, as I said before, our bodies are amazing. If I'm using OPKs, then once I start to have those fertile signs, then I will start to test and I will see, hey, am I having an LH surge, you know, a positive OPK? Then that lets me know that ovulation is likely to occur within the next 24 to 36 hours. If I paused because that's what's true for me. A lot of my clients who have PCOS, that wouldn't be true for them because they already have high LH. So a positive OPK isn't giving them as much insight because their LH is already high. So they would get a positive, but that doesn't mean that ovulation is likely to occur. It just means that their baseline LH is likely high already. So I hope that that provides some clarity. Caitlin, in that video that I'm linking to down below, actually goes into a little bit more detail around that. So definitely check that out if you have PCOS and you're wondering what OPKs really mean for you. Definitely watch that video. Okay, now if I'm using Proov to test the progesterone after I've ovulated, because that's when you produce progesterone. That's when I produce progesterone. That's when bodies produce progesterone in large amounts, is after ovulation. then I will do that on day 7, day 8, day 9, and day 10 after ovulation. And that's gonna let me know, is your body producing adequate progesterone? See? Oh no. And that's how I track my cycle. So in all of those mini cycles that I have tracked, there are 3 things that I have learned and that I'd really like to share with you. The first thing is that a negative OPK, for me at least, does not mean an anovulatory cycle. There have been times where I have gotten a negative OPK, but then still had the shift in my temperature and a sustained high temperature. I've had a shift in my cervical mucus and it's remained dry until my next period. And I've actually gotten positives on progesterone test. So that lets me know ovulation did occur, but somehow when I was testing my OPKs, I actually missed my LH surge. So that's a possibility. Sometimes you can feel like, oh no, I'm getting a negative LH and I haven't gotten a positive one. Perhaps I'm not ovulating at all, but really maybe you're just testing at a time when it's not picking up the surge. Just something to consider. The other thing that I have learned is that stress shortens my cycles. It just does. Likely because it has an effect on my progesterone levels, which then shortens my luteal phase. So yeah, that's how it affects my cycles. For some people, stress might lengthen it because then ovulation is delayed. So stress either way does have an impact on my cycles and I can't deny it. And then the third thing that I've learned is that every cycle is different. There is no predicting it for me. The whole like, I will always ovulate on day 11 or 12 or 13 or 14 just isn't true for me and isn't true for a lot of people. You know, there can be some changes in when you might ovulate, which will then leave some changes to how long your whole cycle is. So that's what I have learned along the way. Every cycle is unique and there's no such thing as a perfect cycle. Okay, so let's pull up that chart that I told you I was going to share with you and take a look and see what we can learn from taking a look at my charts. So as you can see, this was a 27-day cycle. So if we count from day 1, the first day of my period, until the day before my next period, there were 27 days. You'll notice that there are numbers if you look at the latter half of my cycle, and that lets you know that those were the days after ovulation occurred, after that temp shift occurred, and after there was a clear change in my cervical mucus, which let me know that ovulation had happened. Okay, so this first kind of shady blue area, this was the menstrual phase of my cycle. This next blue shaded area was the follicular phase. Now this little sliver that you see here of blue is when ovulation likely occurred. And this is something that you only know after based on a change in cervical mucus, basal body temperature, maybe cervical position or progesterone test or an ultrasound. And then this final shaded in blue area was my luteal phase. So this is when my temperature was high, ovulation had already occurred. If you stuck around to the end of this video, congrats, you made it. And thank you. So to enter the giveaway, all you have to do is comment down below. Make sure that you are a US resident and at least 18 years old. And then that's it. You are entered to win and I will let you know who our winner is, or 2 winners are, and I will get those kits out to you as soon as possible. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you are well. Be well, and bye for now.